Hello, welcome to my channel. What if Naruto Reborn? In High School DXD with Power of Destruction Part 4. Sighed heavily as he watched Naruto and Tamamo being escorted out of his office to his village's best hotel. For anything less would be an insult. As the door closed, leaving him alone, he turned around in his chair, gazing down at his village. His mind was still with the strange, difficult to believe story he had been told by the blonde and his companion. Yet, despite that, he found himself believing every single word that he had been told. How could he not? A single look at his companion was more than enough to squash any doubt one might have. Yukai is what her species was called, a mix between human and animal, which depending on their specific species each have different forms. Tamamo being a one-tailed kitsune yukai, though even her power felt ridiculous. The blonde on the other hand, he couldn't feel any trace of chakra in his entire being. Naruto had told him small amounts. He didn't believe for a second he was telling everything about where they were from. Though even what he did reveal was very concerning. Devils, angels, fallen angels, yukai and more inhabited their world. And, if he was to believe him, the majority of them were each powerful enough to make a cage look like nothing more than a child. He had never been more glad for not being his usual brash self when first encountering those two. He had asked how powerful he was to get a good idea of his threat level should something happen. The answer he got was shocking. However, a super devil is what his rank was. Someone that was ranked above ultimate class devils who were already capable of wiping cities of the map. He himself compared these ultimate devils to the tail beasts, which had similar destructive capabilities. However, the difference between ultimate class devil and super devil were massive if his words were to be believed. Whereas ultimate class devils were capable of wiping out cities, super devils could destroy entire countries with ease. It was a frightening thought that he had been in the same room as someone that could wipe Kaminari no Kuni of the map with so much as a snap of his fingers. Even the legendary Shodai Hokage Hashirama Senju or Madara Uchiha were but children compared to this man. The fact that gods were actually real where they were from also came as a shock, something he revealed when he said both Tamamo and himself were her guards despite him being stronger than her, which Amaterasu herself had confirmed. Once more they were his words, but he was inclined to believe him. To be completely honest, A was scared for what would happen if anyone else from their world would arrive here. They were really lucky that Naruto had no intention of conquering or destroying any of the 5 great villages, as there was nothing they could do to stop them. No, Naruto had told him both he and Tamamo would be busy trying to find a way back home. Apparently he had proposed to her not even minutes before something had happened that had sent both of them here. He had told them that if there was anything they needed, they shouldn't be afraid to ask. He wondered though if their arrival, along with the capture of his brother by the Akatsuki, was some kind of divine intervention. Nevertheless, he should prepare himself for the chance of a possible war breaking out in the future. Naruto gave the animal masked shinobi a nod in thanks as they arrived before the door belonging to the hotel room they had been offered. The masked shinobi inclined his head slightly before disappearing with some sort of technique. Interesting, Naruto mused before focusing his attention on Tamamo, who had been silent ever since they left A's office. She was acting more subdued than usual and he had somewhat of an idea why. The amount of stares that they were subjected to on their way here didn't help either. Unfortunately, however, Naruto couldn't do anything about it. Well, he could have killed them without batting an eye, but it would end up pissing of the Raikage and the rest of these shinobi under his command. That, and he doubted that Tamamo would be happy if he were to commit a massacre. He banished those thoughts as he opened the door and allowed her to enter first, closing the door behind him as he followed her inside. He turned on the lights before removing his robes and placing them on a nearby chair. As he walked through the hotel room, Naruto took notice of the fact that the technology was more advanced than the human world back home, but nowhere as close as the underworld when it came to advanced technology. A frown formed on his face as he walked into an open room. Tamamo stood there before a large window. He could see her ears were flattened against her head and she was hugging her tail. Slowly he walked over towards her before wrapping his arms around her waist and burying his face in her hair. "I'm sorry," Naruto mumbled softly as he held her close. Tamamo moved in his hold. "What do you mean?" Naruto frowned. "This whole situation. We should be with Amaterasu bringing her the good news, but instead we're stuck in this strange world. You were so happy when I agreed to marry you, and to see you like this." Letting go of her tail, Tamamo turned around, still in his arms. She buried her face in his chest as her tail wrapped around him from behind. "I don't blame you for this, Naruto-kun. I'm aware you are as upset as I am, so don't worry. You're right though that I am upset that it happened right now of all times." The ears on her head twitched as Naruto kissed the space between them. "Are you all right though?" Naruto blinked before leaning back a bit by the sudden question. Seeing his confused expression, Tamamo elaborated. "During the talk we had with that man, I noticed you wince each time he mentioned something about Konoha." "Oh, that?" Naruto removed one hand from around her waist as scratched his cheek. "Yeah, I'm not sure what that was all about honestly. Thankfully it didn't really hurt other than being annoying. Releasing a soft sigh, he surprised Tamamo as he picked her up, earning a cute squeal from the fox girl as he himself sat down on a nearby chair with her on his lap. The view is quite nice, Naruto commented as the room provided to them had a large window in the direction of the ocean. I would go as far as call it peaceful, even. Tamamo seemed to hum something, though she wasn't looking at the same thing he was. No, her eyes were closed in an attempt to cut off the outside world, only focusing on Naruto, who was lovingly holding her. Say, do you wish to stay here until we find a way back, or wander around and see what this strange new place has to offer? I don't care as long as I'm with you, she said softly. I see, guess we'll stay here for a bit. Maybe get a map or something. All right, Tama-chan. Tama-chan, Tamamo repeated as she tilted her head so she could look at him. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Yeah, why do you not like it? I can revert back to your first name if you want. Or perhaps Mei-chan is better. Naruto shook his head. Nah, it's not that fitting. Tamamo buried her face back in his chest as her tail swished from side to side. No, Tama-chan is fine. Naruto laughed softly as he ran a hand through her pink locks. All right then, Tama-chan it is. He closed his eyes while leaning back in the chair. His breathing slowed down as he slowly dozed off to sleep. There was no need to keep himself on guard. Only a fool would attempt to barge in, and Tamamo was more than strong enough to remove any threats. How strong? Even he didn't know that, as there has never been a situation where her power was needed, though she didn't seem to mind. As he was close to falling asleep, he felt Tamamo wrap her tail around him, an action which made him hold her a bit closer, his head coming to rest on top of hers. Is this smart, Naruto-kun? Tamamo asked as she nervously glanced around. Of course, Naruto replied as he stretched his limbs. It was dark outside, it being around 10 p.m. if the clock he looked at was correct. He had woken up an hour or two ago to find Tamamo had fallen asleep on his chest. Once realizing that he had overslept, he had gently woke her up, which resulted in Tamamo apologizing several times for not waking him up. He didn't care though, as he waved her apologies off. They didn't have any appointments scheduled, so it didn't matter one bit. After that, they went outside in order to get something to eat. Fortunately for them, it seemed that the Reikage had informed the people in charge of several restaurants that their food was being paid for by the village. Which was good, as neither of them had the right currency to pay for anything. The food itself was okay. He preferred Tamamo's cooking though, as there was nothing that could beat her home-cooked meals. Afterwards, however, Naruto and Tamamo had left the village. Temporarily, for now, as Naruto wanted to test if his power still worked up to date. So, carrying Tamamo, he had flown a few miles to the east towards the ocean he was able to spot from the window of their hotel room. He had handed over his robes to Tamamo, who was wearing a coat over her usual outfit as she felt cold. Naruto, on the other hand, was clad in pants and a sleeveless shirt. He, unlike Tamamo, didn't feel any cold, as his body was always the perfect temperature. Something he had his Phoenix blood to thank for. Finishing his stretches, he turned to his companion before warning her, "You might want to take a couple steps back." Heeding his advice, Tamamo moved back, watching as Naruto flared his power. The temperature in the clearing began to rise as flames began to flicker into existence. They started at Naruto, who clenched his hands into fist, an action which caused a pillar of flames to burst into existence and completely engulf him. Tamamo jumped slightly due to being caught off guard, though she wasn't worried, as Naruto had shown her several times his own flames didn't hurt him one bit. As the pillar died down, it shows Naruto, his body surrounded by a light glow and his blonde hair looking like it was on fire. Tamana narrowed her eyes in preparation as she saw him take a deep breath, followed by a brief spike in his energy before she watched as he breathed out a literal tsunami of flames. It started off as a thin stream of fire which rapidly expanded the moment it came in touch with the ocean beneath it. She took a few more steps back as the flames rose several dozen feet in height and spreading for as far as her eyes could see. The sizzling sound of water melting reached her ears as the flames didn't seem to be stopping anytime soon. In fact, they seemed to be increasing in intensity, if anything. She froze for a second, her ears on top of her head twitching as several people landed near her. Glancing at him from the corner of her eyes, she saw it was the Reikage himself, along with both the blonde and dark-skinned males from earlier today, who all watched the spectacle with awe. For the scene he and his guards had stumbled upon was one of amazement. Never in his life had he seen a fire technique of this size. He could even feel sweat running down the side of his face despite not being close to the flames himself. He had heard of stories of the legendary Uchiha Madara, who had a mastery of Kaiten that could scorch battlefields from his predecessor, but even he doubted it was anything like he was seeing before him. He could sense the amount of energy being released was on par with the Nibi itself, and it was being used to perform an attack on a scale like this by this monster. He now believed Naruto when he had told him he was one of the strongest beings in the world they were from. Though it made him wonder what kind of monsters existed in that world of his that were stronger than the man before him. Finally, after what seemed like hours, the sea of flames died down as Naruto stopped supplying it more power. An enormous amount of steam began to form as a result of him no longer keeping the flames up, completely covering the ocean from view. Keeping his eyes on it for a bit longer, Naruto clicked his tongue before he turned around. He had sensed the new arrivals, so he wasn't surprised. Instead, he acknowledged them with a small nod of his head as he walked up to Tamamo, who handed him his robes back. He playfully ruffled her hair, making her pout before turning to face the Raikage and his guards, his own robes thrown loosely over his shoulder. Something wrong? Shook his head. No, not really. A few people were alarmed as they could see the lights from your little show all the way back in Kumo. Ah, well, I just needed to test something really. He held a hand up which became engulfed in flames. These flames seem much more potent, which is quite strange. He, and everyone else present, kept their eyes on the intense flames which dissipated with a casual flick of his wrist. Anyway, Tamamo and I are done here, so if you don't mind. Wings made out of pure flames formed behind his back, much like they did earlier today. He swooped the fox girl of her feet before kicking off at fast speeds. The Raikage, along with his guards and the hidden ambush squad, watched as he flew through the air towards Kumogaku. Once they were out of his range, he casted one last look towards the ocean before giving his men the command to return to the village. Had he paid a bit more attention, he would have noticed the pair of glowing, yellow eyes that were watching them before sinking into the ground. Ah, that's the spot, came Naruto's muffled voice as he was laying face down on a mattress. Straddling his thighs was Tamamo, who hummed softly as she ran her hands over his back, using her ridiculous strength to relax his tense muscles. GHK. Naruto made a noise as he heard and felt something pop. Oops, sorry, Tamamo apologized as she channeled magic chakra to her hands and covered them in a thin layer of ice before placing them on the area she assumed was hurting. A soft hissing sound could be heard as her cold hands made contact with his heated body. Tamamo had to actively keep channeling energy to her hands, or else it would have melted the moment it came in contact with him. Hey Tamamo, Naruto spoke as he turned his head on the side and looked at her from the corner of his eyes. The fox girl replied as she continued to knead his back. Didn't the Raikage said he needed us for HNNG for something. Tamamo stopped what she was doing and gained a thoughtful expression. Well, she tapped her chin. I think so, she answered with a shrug. I'm not sure honestly. Her tail drooped down behind her at the answer. Hey, Naruto managed to turn around, so now he was looking up at her. He allowed his eyes to travel over her form, something he could easily do as Tamamo had removed her top piece, leaving her clad in only her blue stockings and her arm pieces. He smiled a bit as he looked down to see Tamamo using her tail to cover her private areas. Despite how many times he had seen her naked body, he couldn't get enough of it. Naruto trailed his eyes upwards before making contact with Tamamo's own as she stared down at him. Her head tilted sideways in an adorable manner. She truly was one of a kind and he couldn't be happier with her. Tilting his head sideways much like her, he gestured for her to come closer, which she quickly did by lowering herself onto of him. A soft moan escaping her mouth as her breast made contact with his skin, but other than that she made herself comfortable in the warmth his body provided. Her head rested on top of his chest, her fluffy ears twitching to the sound of his heart beating slowly as her tail swished lazily behind her. It's boring here, huh? Naruto suddenly spoke up. Kind of, Tamamo answered softly. It's quite different compared to Japan. While the language is mostly similar, the exception being a few words here and there. It's somewhat shocking honestly. The technology in this world is weird as well. Certain things are much more advanced whereas others are lacking quite a lot. Though I do like the amount of nature that's in the air. It's even cleaner than back home. Yeah, I noticed that too. I wonder how populated this world is. He said there were 5 major villages with Kumogaku being one of them. Despite that, it's not really that densely populated, and if the other 4 are anything like this one, it make me wonder, you know. He sighed as he felt Tamamo rub circles on his chest. I do hope we can get back home quickly. When I had a feeling something bad was going to happen, I didn't expect this. Tamamo hummed once more and he looked down as he felt her breathing slow down. He smiled fondly as he saw she was trying to keep herself awake. Ruffling her hair, he whispered, "It's all right Tamamo, you can take a nap." Thank you, she replied with a cute yawn before her eyes fluttered closed. Naruto watched her for a little longer before he pulled the covers on the side over her to cover her naked back as he too slowly closed his eyes. The door leading to the Raikage's office opened as Tamamo entered, followed by Naruto. The two saw the bulky man sitting on a couch, clearly waiting for them. You wanted to see us? Naruto asked as he and Tamamo stopped a couple feet in front of him. He ran a hair through his blonde locks, which started to become too long to the point it began bothering his eyes. Yes, A said. In a few days a Cage Summit will be held in Tetsu no Kuni. Attending the summit will be the leader, Cage, of each of the 5 major villages. The subject of the meeting will revolve around the Akatsuki, which is a terrorist group that have been capturing Bayu in an attempt to take over the world. The latter is just an assumption, but it's one made from the evidence we have so far. Now, you might wonder why I'm telling you all this, and the reason is quite simple. Each cage is allowed to bring 2 guards, while I already have 2 picked out for the job. That's not what I'm getting at. I want both of you to come along with us. Since neither of you are a shinobi, I'm technically not breaking any rules I have set up. Tamamo and Naruto looked at another as they finished speaking. An apparent mental conversation seemed to be happening with the couple. Before we answer, can you tell us exactly what you expect from either of us? I doubt you're doing this from the goodness of your heart. Chuckled. While it's mostly true, I'm asking this for a selfish reason, as I have first-hand experience with the power you possess. Your companion is still unknown. He sent Tamamo an apologetic look which she waved off. She knew her own power, which was all that mattered. Even Naruto, the person she had pretty much devoted her life to, was unaware of her full power. She had only shown him immense strength along with her ice abilities. The rest she had kept a secret, and Naruto had never asked her about it either. Mainly because there was no need to. Only an absolute fool would try to challenge Naruto, or somebody who was overconfident in their abilities. Which was why she let him handle any problems coming their way. Don't take it wrong, she wasn't weak, far from it, and Naruto knew that as well, but only she knew the true extent. She also enjoyed the care she was feeling when he would protect her, but that was something she wouldn't say out loud either. Anyway, your power, Naruto-san, is more than enough to deal with this Akatsuki. I'm not saying you should, but I'm saying you can. Nevertheless, even if you don't want to, I know both of you want to travel, which Tetsu no Kuni is quite a nice place for. A bit cold but very nice nonetheless. It's a small country that has samurai instead of shinobi. That piqued Naruto's interest. Samurai have always been somewhat interesting to him, and so visit a land full of them would be a chance he doubted he would get often. Very well, Tamamo and I will be joining you on your travels, mainly because we are quite bored. Regarding the former though, honestly I'm not quite sure about interfering with the issues this world is having, you know. Perhaps if it'll affect us during our stay here we'll step in, otherwise. He trailed off, but I knew what he meant and nodded. Perhaps it would be for the best if they kept out of their business. They weren't shinobi, they didn't belong here. Something that was made evident when the blonde had enough power in him to most likely fight every Bayu at once and come out as the winner too. It was simply unheard of and would more than likely cause panic through the nations. He wouldn't put it past certain individuals to attempt to capture them in order to study them. Stifled a chuckle. He would pay good money to see how that would play out. That I can agree with. Held out his hand. Naruto walked up to the man and shook it, making sure to put a fair amount of strength in it, and saw him wince slightly. Breaking the handshake, he turned around, a small smirk playing on his face as one of his arms encircled Tamamo. You can send one of those masked people again next time you need us. Was all he said before the two left the office. Once outside, Naruto halted in his steps, Tamamo copying him as she too stopped. A teleportation circle formed on the floor beneath them. As it was fully formed, they stepped inside and it began to glow. Naruto was easily able to sense the hidden Anbu, and he was sure Tamamo did as well. Oh well, there was no need to hide his ability to teleport, as there was no chance for them to copy it. The glow from the teleportation circle increased in intensity briefly before it died down, and when it did, the Anbu were treated to the sight of an empty hallway. After extending their senses, they concluded they were no longer inside of the building they were in, which prompted some to blink behind their mask. Teleportation, while not a new concept to them or shinobi in general, since the Yondaime Hokage was famous for his use of Hiration, what they had just seen was quite different. The elegant-looking purple-colored circle that had suddenly formed on the ground had immediately caught their attention. While any other time they would have taken it as a possible attack, they had opted to keep hidden, unaware they had already been caught in the first place. After all, the Raikage had made it very clear to them that if he wanted so, the blonde male could reduce Kumogakur to rubble, and not even he would have been able to stop him. So, they watched as he showed them his own abilities, which apparently involved teleportation. Strangely enough, they didn't sense any chakra coming from the man, something that should have been impossible, as everything, from humans to animals, has chakra inside of them, or else they would die. It was something that increased the curiosity they had for the blonde, as he already had shown some rather interesting and unique abilities, such as those wings made from pure flames that gave him the ability to fly, or the fire show they had seen a couple days ago. Making a few hand signs to the Anbu hanging upside down on the opposite side of what appeared to be the leader of the squad, he watched as he received a nod. Giving one in return, he placed his fingers in a ram sign as he used a shunshin to disappear, informing the Raikage of what they had just witnessed. Back with Tamamo and Naruto, the two appeared back in their room. The latter leaned in and kissed the fox girl before he walked over to the table that was in the room, which had numerous scrolls on top of it. They were Tamamo's, though he used them as well. They had all sorts of stuff sealed inside of them, ranging from clothing to books and many other items that were of use. He grabbed the one that had the kanji for clothes on them, carefully opening it. Once open, it revealed to be divided in two. One side had his name while the other side had Tamamo's. Underneath it were several small rows, each one holding a different set of clothing. Naruto channeled a small, very small amount of energy to his fingertips before sliding it over where the words shirt, black were written. A small puff of smoke later, and laying on top of the scroll was his desired article of clothing. He hummed softly before removing the robes he was currently wearing and replaced them with the shirt he had just unsealed. He stretched his arms, feeling the soft fabric which according to Amaterasu herself was some of the best the world had to offer on his skin. The robes he had put to the side were suddenly grabbed by Tamamo, who had made her way over as she folded them neatly before placing them on one of the empty chairs before plopping down on one herself. Naruto watched as Tamamo reached for a scroll herself, a different one though, as she opened it, her delicate fingers trailing over it. From his position Naruto wasn't able to get a good look at which scroll she was fumbling with, so he watched as a puff of smoke formed which Tamamo waved away. A small stack of books greeted his eyes. Curious, he saw Tamamo's amber eyes sparkle as she looked through them before pulling out a specific one and sealing the others back up. "What's that you got there, Kon?" Tamamo looked at him before at the book she was holding. Turning it around, Naruto read the title before sweat dropping. "How to Be a Good Wife," he read out loud, which prompted Tamamo to nod her head. Naruto brought a hand up and ran it through his hair. "You know there's no need for that, right?" He received a confused look and shook his head. Moving back in his chair, he patted his lap, signaling for her to sit. He had barely blinked before Tamamo was there, her feet dangling to the side and her head resting in the crook of his neck. Naruto placed one hand on her thighs while the other softly rubbed her tail. "You don't have to do anything to be a good wife, as the book puts it, Tamamo-chan. Just keep being yourself. There's no need for any training, and if there was, I doubt a book would be a good source for something such as that." "Okay." He glanced down to see her glistening eyes staring back at him. "I don't want you to change who you are. I want you to keep being you, the goofy, cute yet adorable Tama-chan I love and adore." It was silent for a moment after he finished speaking, a silence that was eventually broken by the soft sniffing sound that could be heard. Naruto smiled a bit as he stared in front of him. The hand he was rubbing her tail with came up and held her head close while his fingers softly scratched her ears. Eventually though her sniffing subsided, yet Tamamo kept her face buried in the new shirt he had just put on. Oh well, it was worth it, he mused. To ease her worries, to clear her mind from any insecurities she might had. It didn't take much longer for Tamamo to pull her head back. Her eyes were still a bit puffy, but that only made her look a lot cuter than usual. Suddenly she smiled, catching him off guard before she shifted in his lap. Her legs were now to each side of him while she was facing him. The smile she wore was doing certain things to a part of his body. Her hands came up and her soft fingers began to mingle with his hair. Naruto closed his eyes, or rather, he felt his eyes droop. "Ah, Tamamo," he muttered before shaking his head to stay awake. He glared playfully at the fox girl, who looked away while sticking her tongue out at him from the corner of her mouth. Narrowing his eyes, he leaned down and pressed his lips against her, catching her tongue between his lips. Naruto took pleasure in seeing her eyes widen as he sucked on the appendage between his lips, eliciting a soft whine from Tamamo, who pouted as he disengaged. "Something wrong?" he teasingly asked Tamamo, who huffed before wiggling, successfully making him falter as he had somewhat forgotten how they were positioned. "You want her?" he asked and received a nod in return, her amber eyes looking at him with a seductive glint to them. Moving his hands to her lower back, he stood up. Immediately Tamamo locked her legs behind his back as he walked over to the bed before softly lowering her down. Her legs kept their position behind his back. Naruto looked down at her slightly flushed face as she smiled up at him. His hands were rubbing circles on her thighs while her bushy tail rested between her legs, occasionally twitching as it rubbed against his legs. He groaned softly as he felt her foot rub up and down his lower back as Tamamo kept looking at him while she bit her index finger. Naruto had to suppress the urge to take her right then and there, something that was a lot harder than one might think. Letting go of her thighs for a moment and earning him a small whine from Tamamo, he reached up and removed his shirt, throwing it to the side where it landed on a chair that was there. He lightly tapped her leg as he undid his pants. Seeing what he was doing, Tamamo leant up as she undid the obi that kept her top together before removing it altogether. Reaching upwards, she undid the ribbon that kept her peach pink hair in twintails, letting it flow freely as it reached just past her shoulders and stopping at her breast. She then continued on and removed her braces, so she was left wearing just her blue stockings and her white panties. Looking back up, Tamamo let her eyes travel over Naruto's muscular form as he too was left in only his underwear. A quick glance told her he was very aroused, much like she was. Much like Tamamo, Naruto couldn't help but stare at her, especially with her hair that was now free, making her look much more seductive than normal as parts framed her face perfectly. Removing her legs from around him, Tamamo got the hint as she began to lower her panties, Naruto meeting her halfway down as he took over, taking notice that they were somewhat moist. He threw the article of clothing near the rest before removing his own boxes that he wore. Naked as the day he was born, he stood there before he motioned for Tamamo to move backwards a bit, something she did before he joined her on the bed. In Naruto, Tamamo's breath hitched as she looked down to see his spiky hair between her legs. A mixture of cute moans and whimpers left her mouth as she felt his wet tongue trail over her lower lips before prodding her insides. Her legs froze briefly before she on reflex rested them on his shoulders on each side of his head. Her moans increased in pitch as she felt his fingers trace her outer lips while his tongue was wiggling inside of her. Tamamo hugged her tail close, which was swishing back and forth excitedly as the need to grab onto something became too much. A rumbling sound came from her as she purred softly as his hands started to rub up and down her thighs, stopping when he reached her stocking before moving back up. Naruto meanwhile was enjoying himself. His eyes were closed as he focused on pleasing Tamamo by running his tongue along her inner walls, which clenched in response. His eyes then noticed the small nub that had exposed itself due to the stimulation Tamamo was experiencing. Knowing exactly what it was and what it would do, he retracted his tongue from inside of her before latching his lips around the small nub, his tongue flicking it deliriously. The reaction was immediate as a loud moan escaped Tamamo's lips. Her back arched as he could feel the heels of her feet dig in his back. He actually had to bid back a groan at the immense strength she was using. Feeling her body tense up, he knew what was coming next, so removing his lips from the nub and replacing it with his fingers, he went back to eating her out. Just in time, as well as not even a minute later, and accompanied by a very needy moan, Tamamo came. Her release, which tasted sweet like usual, flowed into his mouth. He swallowed it with no hesitation, even as he continued to lap at her now soaked outer lips, cleaning them of any residue liquid from her orgasm. Once finished, he leaned back up, Tamamo's legs falling down to the side, though she paid it no mind as her eyes were somewhat glazed over. Her breathing was erratic as she had let go of her tail in favor of groping her own breast. A small blush adorned her cheeks while said tail lay limply to the side, twitching every now and then in response to how her legs would spasm. She was brought out of her daze as she felt something rub up and down her lower lips. A strangled moan escaped her throat while Naruto himself let out a groan. Making eye contact, Tamamo sent him a small nod as she pawed at her own chest. Seeing her give permission, he lined himself up with her wet slit before pushing in. Immediately he hissed as her inner walls clung tightly around the intruder that had entered her. A drawled-out moan left both of them as Naruto continued till he bottomed out of her. His hands trailed down her thighs, down to her calves, making sure to massage the flesh while continuing to move down, coming to stop at her ankles, which he held before eventually reaching her stocking-clad feet as he rubbed her soles with his thumb. Tamamo wreathed on the bed beneath him while she got used to feeling him inside of her again. Despite how many times they had done it together, Tamamo was still as tight as the first time they had done it, back when he had taken her virginity. However, he couldn't complain, or rather he would be a fool to do so, as the sensations of her inner walls convulsing around his member was one of a kind. Tamamo looked down to where they were connected as she felt him move out an inch or so before pushing back in to see if she was ready. Feeling that she indeed was, Naruto moved his hands back up and took a hold of her inner thighs. Her legs were pushed in AM formation, giving him a good view of his member, which was now slick from her fluids move in and out of her as he began to give shallow thrusts. Tamamo gave quiet yips each time he fully sheathed himself inside of her, followed by the delightful clenching of her inner walls before he pulled more out of her, increasing the force as he thrusted back in. Tamamo moved her hands to her breast, which swayed with each thrust she was receiving, and began playing with the globes of fresh, pinching and flicking her own nipples while arching her back each time she felt him hit a certain spot inside of her. Leaning his head down, he latched onto her neck, kissing and sucking her skin while keeping his rhythmic thrust going strong. Tamamo ran one of her hands through his hair, fisting his locks while her other hand clawed at his back. Neither of them knew how much time had passed as they continued their pleasurable activities. Having changed positions some time ago, Naruto was currently laying on his back, his hands placed on Tamamo's hips as she bounced on top of him. He was enthralled by the expression of absolute lust that could be seen on Tamamo's face as she stopped bouncing for a moment and instead grinded their crotches together. "Ah, Tamamo, I'm close again." The fox girl in question looked down at him, flashing him a smile before increasing the tempo. Putting a good hold on her hips, Naruto began to thrust upwards each time she came down, increasing both of their pleasure. Feeling his end near, Naruto gave her one last, deep thrust before he held her down while releasing inside of her for the upteenth time. Likewise, Tamamo's inner walls clenched extremely tight around him, her body shaking while her tail had stiffened as she too reached her release. Not a moment thereafter her body slumped down and Naruto quickly held her close. They were both breathing heavily, having finally tired the other out, which was impressive as Naruto never had imagined someone able to keep up with him. Even when he was younger and would sleep with the maids that lived in the mansion, he could easily outlast him, yet Tamamo was able to keep up with him with little to no problem. He pressed his lips against her forehead in the form of a kiss, a soft mewl emanating from her in return. "I love you, Tamamo," he said softly while brushing a few locks to the side that covered her eyes. She smiled at him, a tired smile but a smile nonetheless. "I love you too, Naruto-kun." 2 days later, the Raikage along with his 2 guards, Darui and C, stood at the gate which either lead you in or out of Kumogakure. Surrounding them were a mix of villagers and shinobi who were there to see their leader off. They were currently waiting, however, on Naruto and Tamamo, who should be here any second as he had sent an Anbu towards their hotel room little over an hour ago. "Ah, are we late? Speak of the devil and he appears," something that had never been more fitting as Naruto and Tamamo parted through the crowd. Both were clothed in the same outfit they had when they arrived, which, of course, caused several males, shinobi and civilians alike to check Tamamo out. Some with interest, as despite having seen her around the village the past few days she was still, in their eyes at least, one of a kind with her ears and bushy tail which amplified her beauty. Others just looked at her with lust clearly visible in their eyes, silently cursing the blonde who was holding her hand. The pink it was truly beautiful, and the outfit she wore only added to their imagination of what she might look like without it. Yet, they knew better as to attempt anything against the blonde male, having clearly been warned by their raikage that if anyone would attempt anything towards either of them they would be killed without a question. Naruto-san, Tamamo-san, I see you're here, greeted them with his gruff voice. Yeah, we had to make sure we didn't leave anything behind, you know. He waved his hand. That's fine, though are you sure you're going dressed like that? I don't know if I mentioned it, but Tetsu no Kuni is completely covered in snow, which I doubt will be good for your lady. Naruto just shook his head. It's fine really, if worse comes to worse I can always carry her, as my body temperature never drops below 37 degrees and I can even increase it if necessary. Blinked, something his two guards mimicked. I see, that quite handy. Very well, if you two are ready Surui, Mabui, make sure Kumo runs fine while I'm away and hopefully progress can be made there. Hi Raikage-sama, I will do my utmost best to keep Kumogaku running like normal. Her words were met with a firm nod from the bulky man, who then gave one last wave to the people that came to see him off. Darui, see, let's go. Naruto-san, Tamamo-san, we'll be walking for most of the trip, which will be 2 or 3 days depending on the weather. That's fine with me, Tamamo. I don't mind either, Naruto-kun, Raikage-san. Good, let's head off then. With that, the group of 5 began their journey to Tetsu no Kuni, where the cage summit would be held. Leading the group was the Raikage, who was flanked by his guards, while Tamamo and Naruto leisurely followed after them. How much longer till we're, there? Came Tamamo's question as she propped her chin on his collar, a cute yawn escaping her lips as she did so. Her hot breath made contact with his cheeks, causing him to turn his head to see her sleepy expression. Not sure, was Naruto's reply as he stopped himself from shrugging his shoulders due to him carrying Tamamo on his back. He had offered to carry her the moment they entered Tetsu no Kuni and snow could be seen. Tamamo's choice of footwear made walking through snow, especially as much as this country had not an option. And he had caught her shivering from the cold temperature which he, due to the ability to control his own body temperature, wasn't aware of. Yes, he knew it was colder than Kumo, but exactly by how much remained unknown to him. So when he had offered to carry her, Tamamo had quickly accepted his proposal, cuddling into him as Naruto kept his body a few degrees above the normal temperature a human body had. His hands were placed under her knees to make it easier to carry her while channeling heat to keep her bare thighs warm, which she helped him with by using her tail to isolate the heat. How about you go back to sleep, him? He asked her with a soft smile. I'll make sure to wake you up once we arrive. MHMO-K, she mumbled as she rested her face in the back of his neck. Naruto made sure he still had a good grip on her legs before he continued to walk, catching up with his escorts who hadn't noticed he had slowed down. Ah, there you are. Or they did, as the Raikage spoke once he managed to catch up with them. Hey, sorry, but I was taking care of Tamamo here. Upon mentioning the fox girl, the 3 men turned their heads before spotting her on his back, sleeping soundly as her ears would twitch every now and then. She's quite tired and I want to make sure she was comfortable, you know. HMPF, that's fine. Let's continue though. Once we reach that hill in the distance over there, we should be able to see Tetsu no Kuni, or at least the small village inside of it. Naruto quirked up an eyebrow. Ho, we should be there before it gets dark then, correct? Correct, assured him. Good, while I'm far from tired I've seen enough snow for the next few years. He joked, which earned him nods in agreements. It took them around half an hour to reach the top of the hill, but the view once there was quite something. While a regular human might have problems seeing it with the small amount of mist that seemed to be surrounding it, Naruto did not have those problems. The village appeared to be surrounded by mountains on each side, which the Raikage explained lead to one of the remaining 4 countries, which was quite interesting though expected, seeing how Tetsu no Kuni was a neutral country. Looks bigger than I thought it would be. Naruto couldn't help but comment before averting his gaze as he took a deep breath of fresh air. So how much longer till we get down there from where we are at? 2 hours, less if we speed up a bit. Darui spoke up with a nodding in agreement. Darui speaks the truth. Last time we were here it was around an hour or 2 and we weren't any sort of hurry. Even with you carrying Tamamo-san it won't make a difference since you've been keeping up with us, no problem. Naruto hummed as he glanced back down towards the village. Let's keep moving then. The faster we get there the better, as Tamamo could use a bed instead of my back. I gave a series of low chuckles. Very well then, we'll be doubling our pace. Make sure to keep up, all right. With that the group advanced once more, moving down the hill towards the village that laid below. Halt! The group of 5 heard someone say to them as they were stopped at something akin to an outpost of sorts. Naruto tilted his head to see who it was that told them to stop and saw they were wearing grey-plated armor along with a mask that hid their face. Their weapon sheaths were attached to the side for easy access if a fight broke out. They didn't really look all that intimidating was what came to his mind, a bit different from the samurai he had run into back home. Were these the type of samurai that lived in these lands? What is the problem? Asked the person that stopped them from continuing, who took a step back from the hulking man, his fingers twitching as he moved his hand closer to his katana just in case. This was of course not missed by or his two guards, who got on guard only to stop as a raged yet calm voice spoke up. Stand down. Immediately the samurai obliged before turning to the owner of the voice and bowing his head. Mifune-sama. Koji, the old-looking man said. I'll handle this myself. I want you to check up on Outpost C in the southern section. Hi Mifune-sama, the samurai who was apparently called Koji affirmed before giving one more bow to the older-looking man as he walked off. Please forgive my men, Reikage Dono. They are quite wary with the upcoming Cage Summit that will be held here. Though, Mifune looked behind him where Naruto was standing with Tamamo still asleep on his back. Minato. No, he's been dead for quite some time now. I remember clearly your message stating each cage was only allowed to bring 2 guards with him. You would be correct, Mifune Dono. However, these 2, he waved behind him, are not here as my guards. They wanted to travel as Kumogakur has gotten boring for them, so I offered to escort these 2 to here, to Tetsu no Kuni. I see, Mifune responded before walking past the Reikage and towards the blonde young man. He did indeed resemble Minato very much, especially his hair, which was the same shade as the now dead 4th Hokage had, along with the same deep blue eyes. However, as he got closer he couldn't sense any chakra from him. Something that should be impossible, as every living being has the energy. Deciding that it was something he could mull over later, his eyes travel over to his companion that was sleeping soundly on his back, her head resting on his collarbone with her face buried in the blonde's neck. He had to blink a few times as he looked at the woman to make sure he wasn't imagining what he was seeing. A quick glance to the Reikage and his guards earned him a nod, confirming what he saw was real. Which, in this case, were the pair of orange fox ears which were her ears. He kept any words he wanted to say to himself though as he inspected her further. She wore a blue outfit which showed quite a lot of skin around her arms and thighs, not something one would wear when visiting Tetsu no Kuni, which is known for its cold. Her choice of footwear was also not something one would walk on, and Mifune wondered if those were comfortable. His eyes then caught a brief twitch coming from behind, and upon focusing on what it was he allowed his eyes to widen, if only briefly, as he wondered how he hadn't seen that before, as swaying behind her was none other than a bushy orange foxtail of all things. And while he had seen and experienced a lot of things, this was a first even for him. She looked completely human, though he couldn't quite get a look of her face. The rest of her looked fine, with the exception being her ears and the hair tail. Collecting himself, he then focused on getting a better look of the blonde man that was carrying her and seemed completely oblivious to the cold, judging from what he was wearing. Though a look at the ground around the blonde showed that the snow had melted and turned into water. Spiky sun-kissed hair and deep blue eyes which, upon making eye contact, seemed to hold a certain amount of wisdom that surprised him, as he looked no older than, well, Mifune would put him somewhere between 18 and 20 years old. The blonde gave him a nod in acknowledgement before looking down. Following his gaze, he saw the tail that belonged to the woman on his back wrapped around his arm. Imhum. Tamamo let out a soft sound before she lifted up her head. Bleary, amber eyes blinked slowly as looked around, still appearing half asleep. Are we there? She asked Naruto as she brought one of her hands up to rub away the sleep from her eyes. It was an adorable looking gesture which Naruto unfortunately wasn't able to see, as he was still holding her up by her legs. As Tamamo got rid of any drowsiness, she felt her eyes locked on the old man who stood a feet or 2 away from him, seemingly inspecting them. Her ears twitched once before she went back to leaning on Naruto, who didn't seem to mind. Huh, well, hello to you Tamamo. He greeted her as he rubbed his cheek against the top of her head. Had a good sleep? Yes, thank you Naru. Tamamo mumbled against his neck. From where he was at, Mifune was able to hear what she said despite how soft it was. Naru, he repeated inside his head as he spared the blonde another look. He assumed that was the boy's name, or at least a part of it. With that, he decided to address the 2 to get a good idea of why they are here. While Er informed him they were travelers, he was still a bit skeptical, especially as there should be no reason the Reikage himself would escort someone like this. So, with that in mind, he took a step closer before introducing himself. Hello, I am Mifune, samurai and general of Tetsu no Kuni. May I know your names and the reason for visiting? Ah, sure, whatever. I'm Naruto Bale and the lady on my back is Tamamo no Mei. I'm pretty sure I already told you we are here because Kumo had gotten boring and we wanted to travel. I see, Mifune hummed as he nodded. While he looked calm on the outside, his mind was busy remembering something, that something being the now deceased Kyuubi Jinchuriki, who shared the same first name as the blonde before him. He also looked what one might have expected if you would compare their faces next to each other. It should be coincidence though, as the blonde in front of him looked older than the Jinchuriki should be if he were alive. He also had no whisker marks on his cheek and his skin tone was a bit paler in comparison. Last but not least, he could sense no chakra from him. He also took note of the casual way he addressed the Reikage, not bothering to use any type of respectful suffix behind his name, which didn't seem to bother the bulky Cage one bit. It was surprising, as he was widely known to be quite hot-headed, which only increased any doubts he had that they were no mere civilians. Of course, the woman's animal traits were a big giveaway to anyone with a pair of eyes, but still, he would tell his men to keep an eye on these two. "Follow me, I will lead you to the place you will be staying while you're here," Mifune told him as he turned around, signaling for the Reikage along with his two guards to follow as well. "Huh," Naruto commented as they were led through the village, his eyes darting from left to right as he could sense several people watching him, a poor attempt at hiding themselves as he didn't have to be a censor to know where they were. Of course, the inhabitants had stopped what they were doing as they watched the Reikage and his entourage walking through the streets. The darker skin and the Reikage's hide catching the attention of many. They then looked at the blonde male, who looked around with curiosity twinkling his deep blue eyes, his appearance eliciting a few blushes from some of the civilian women with his exotic-looking hair, before their attention was stolen by the person on his back who appeared to be asleep. Her outfit plus the animal traits were enough for everyone, even the samurai watching the group, to do a double take. Almost as if she was sensing their looks, Tamamo detached her tail from around his arm in favor of protecting her modesty, as her outfit provided one a good look of her behind and her naked skin, partly due to the way Naruto was carrying her. She lightly bit Naruto's neck as her ears twitched as she caught a few people grumble as she did so, Naruto responding by giving her legs a soft squeeze, assuring her everything was alright. She wasn't a fan of giving other people a show of her body, having told him that only he was allowed to see her like that. In fact, she had on numerous occasions tried to outright kill people that blatantly leered at her person, though he had to put a stop to it lest she'd end up on some sort of killing spree. While he could care less about some humans having killed his fair share of them, he didn't want Tamamo to end up as some sort of mass murderer. She was still somewhat pure and innocent, which is an accomplishment by itself. "Here we are," Mifune said as they entered what appeared to be an inn, with the rest following behind. Turning to the group, he gave them a small bow before excusing himself for a moment, giving the group some time to look around. The first thing Naruto noticed was that they were in some sort of lounge, judging by the several tables and chairs that were set up. The second thing was that aside from them no one was there. Naruto was about to walk over to one of the chairs as he deserved a break. While he was far from tired, having carried Tamamo for over a day, the opportunity to sit down was a welcome change. However, before he could even take a step towards it, Mifune returned, making him grumble softly. "Sorry for the wait, but I had to make sure the rooms were ready. Especially with the extra guests I was not expecting." "That's fine," I told the general, "though why is it so empty, if you don't mind me asking? I can clearly see that we're in an inn and one would expect it to be much busier." "Oh, that's because this one is currently only used for important guests such as yourself. We have another establishment that's more in the center of the town that is for more common folk and travelers, which there aren't many around this time of the year." Mifune then raised his hand and shortly thereafter a samurai appeared. "Mifune-sama," the samurai asked as he bowed in respect. Mifune held his hand out towards the group before looking at his subordinate. "Please escort them to their respective rooms. They are room 9 and 8 for the Reikage and his two guards, while these two have room 3. He instructed while gesturing to Naruto and Tamamo at the later part. "Understood." The samurai straightened himself before looking at each of them, and like many before, doing a double take once his eyes landed on Tamamo before controlling himself. It wouldn't do him any good to make himself look like some sort of fool in the presence of his general. "Please follow me." Once he had gotten all of their attention, he gave Mifune one more bow before turning around and leading the 5 to their respective rooms. "It's a bit bland," was the first thing Tamamo said as they were left alone in their assigned room. Naruto couldn't help but nod in agreement as he too looked around. It was as Tamamo said, bland. There was a 2-person futon, not even an actual bed, in the middle of the room, and a cabinet was placed against the wall with a pair of chairs placed next to it. These rooms are reserved for important people. Naruto couldn't help but sound skeptical, as the hotel they stayed at in Kumogakure much more pleasant on the eyes, not to mention bigger. Though that was a hotel and this was more of an inn. Naruto sighed as he walked over towards the futon and allowed himself to fall face down on the piece of furniture. "Guess it'll have to do, at least the futon is comfortable," he said as he watched Tamamo make her way over and sit down next to him. He watched as she bounced a couple times to test his words before nodding. "You're right, it is comfortable." She then fell backwards, her face coming to rest on the same level as his. Having closed his eyes as he decided to take a short nap or something like it, he missed the soft smile Tamamo held as her amber eyes focused on his face. Slowly she began leaning in closer and closer to the point she could feel his breath make contact. Leaning in, Tamamo closed in the last inch or two that separated their faces as she pressed her lips against his in a soft kiss. The feeling of something soft making contact with his lips prompted Naruto to open his eyes before quickly closing them as he enjoyed the affectionate gesture. After a minute, Tamamo leaned back and opened her own eye that she had closed, meeting his blue ones. "What brought that on?" Naruto asked her softly as one of his hands came up and stroked her cheek lovingly. Nothing, she replied sweetly in such a way it caused a shiver ran down his spine. Just to thank you for carrying me all the way here. Ah, you don't need to thank me for that, Tamamo. It's my job to take care of my fiancé, no. At the mention of the current status, Tamamo blushed as she looked down shyly. The ears on top of her head flattened against her head. With a soft groan, Naruto rolled himself over before pulling Tamamo closer. The fox girl rested her head on his chest as the soft beating of his heart calmed her. Tamamo, yes. She looked up at him. Sorry if this brings up any bad memories, but do you have any family that's alive? He watched as she flinched slightly before shaking her head negative. I see. Sorry for bringing it up, Tamamo. He apologized. No, it's fine, she assured him as she felt him play with her tail. I've never known any sort of parental love. I honestly can't even recall my earlier years of my life. My memories go back to when I was 16, which was when I was taken in by that disgusting man, Emperor Toba, who was only interested in my beauty. He wanted me to be his courtesan, she growled out with audible disgust. Thankfully I was able to elude him each time. Back then I didn't have either these ears nor my tail, and I was widely seen as the most beautiful woman that lived in his castle, catching the attention of both men and women alike. Though neither of that mattered once they discovered these ears of mine nor the appendage you are holding. He thought I was deceiving him, merely leading him on during my time there. Which I wasn't, truly. I didn't want him to. Naruto frowned as Tamamo sniffed softly, no doubt remembering the massive manhunt that was sent after her head. He removed the hand from her tail in favor of embracing her tightly, to let her know he was there for her. Shush. It's okay, Tamamo. I'm here for you, always. He rubbed up and down her back in a comforting manner. His eyes were focused up at the ceiling as the only sound that could be heard were the soft crying noises Tamamo made as she could no longer hold in her emotions. Naruto sighed softly as he moved Tamamo so she was now laying on top of him. That done, he once more closed his eyes. This trip was something else really. The small amount of time they had been here in this strange land, Tamamo had cried twice, which is 2 times more than she had done before. Though it was only a matter of time, he supposed. One can only bottle up their emotions to such a degree before they would break free. Much like a dam that could no longer support its content, Tamamo broke as well. Though he was there for her, serving as her support, holding her tightly as she let her tears flow for as long as needed. Naruto wasn't sure how long it took, but eventually Tamamo's sobs slowed down till he understood she had fallen asleep. He himself joining her shortly thereafter. Hours later, Naruto could be seen lounging in one of the chairs that were present in the entrance hall. Curled in his lap was Tamamo, hugging her tail closely. The reason they were in the hall and not their room was because 1. The chairs in their room absolutely sucked compared to these, and 2. They had just returned from a small walk through the village. Half asleep, neither Naruto or Tamamo paid any attention as the door leading to the inn was opened and Mifune walked in. Due to the chair facing the wall that was on the opposite side from the entrance, neither Naruto or Tamamo were able to see the trio of people that entered after the aged samurai. The 3 were led by a young red-haired boy wearing cage robes. Standing behind him was a girl with sand-colored blonde hair done in 4 ponytails and a boy wearing a black full bodysuit. The one thing they all had in common was the hayate they wore that held the insignia of Tsunagaku. Please wait here for a moment, Kazekage Dono, as I will see which rooms are ready. Mifune told the redhead, who nodded his head. Very well, Mifune Dono, we'll be right here. Earning himself a small bow in gratitude, the samurai general walked off, leaving the trio to themselves. This is where we will be staying. The male wearing the black bodysuit spoke up once Mifune was out of hearing range. This doesn't look like anything special, he muttered, only to be nudged to the side by the blonde. Kankuro, she growled at her younger brother. But Temari, Kankuro stopped himself as he saw the look she was giving him before nodding. Good, we're not here for some kind of vacation, so behave yourself. She then turned to her youngest brother, who wasn't paying attention to their bickering. Gaara, is something wrong? She asked him as he hadn't said anything to them since Mifune had left. Not receiving a reply, Temari frowned before noticing Gaara seemed to be focused on something else. Following her youngest brother's gaze, she noticed what he was looking at, as there, peeking just above one of the chairs, was a mop of spiky blonde hair, a shade of blonde she had only seen in one person before. One person who was responsible of saving Gaara from his demons. The one person who made it possible for the 3 of them to actually treat each other like the siblings they were. The one person who reportedly had been killed 3 years ago by none other than Uchiha Sasuke. Gee, Gaara, Temari stammered as she saw her younger brother taking a step towards the person that was sitting away from them. Stopping a feet or 2 away from him, Gaara opened his mouth, speaking the first name that came to his mind upon seeing the unruly locks of blonde hair sticking out. Naruto, Uzumaki Naruto, is that you? Gaara, what do you mean? I know their hair looks the same, but a single look from Gaara shut her up. While she was no longer afraid in the sense that he would kill her should she annoy or even just look at him in a strange way, Temari knew that Gaara was stronger than her, and despite being her brother, he was also her cage. NNNGWA. A groan came from the blonde in front of them as his eyes began to open, having heard someone call his name. Looking around with half-lidded eyes, he saw that there was nobody in front of him before sensing 3 other signatures present aside from himself and Tamamo, who had her face buried in his chest. Soundly asleep, unlike him who was no wide awake. Whoever it was that just spoke, do you mind showing yourself? I would do it myself, but I'm currently unable to. He tilted his head slightly to show he was talking to whomever was standing behind him. He wasn't quite worried though, as he had sensed that whomever it was, they were no threat to him, as he could sense their power, which was around the same level as with the 2 others being lower than both Darui and C. Seeing Gaara doing what the blonde had requested, Temari tried to stop him but was ignored. Letting out a soft sigh, she too made her way over as she couldn't help but be curious. Naruto, Temari heard Gaara gasp out and quickly looked at the blonde that was sitting in the chair, only to let out a gasp, as well as sitting there in a lazy manner was what could only be described as Uzumaki Naruto if he were around her age. Temari fought down the blush that threatened to form as the Naruto look-alike opened his mouth. Naruto himself blinked as the red-haired boy standing in front of him called out his name. His blue eyes meeting the boy's pupillus green. He wore the same robes as I was wearing, leading Naruto to believe that the boy held the same position as he did, which came as a surprise as he looked to be around 16, 17 if he had guessed. I'm sorry, but how do you know my name? I'm pretty sure I've never seen either of you. What do you mean? Do you not remember me, Uzumaki Naruto? The redhead asked with somewhat of a hoarse voice. Uzumaki, Naruto repeated with confusion before bringing up a hand as he winced, feeling somewhat of a stinging pain in the back of his mind. I think you have me confused with someone else, Red. My name is Naruto Bale, not Uzumaki. Gaara frowned at the blonde's words. He had clearly seen him wince, and a quick glance towards his sister showed that she did as well. Yet, he could tell he was telling the truth, which was frustrating as he looked so much like his first friend did. Their hair was the same, with the blondes in front of him having being longer and a few locks covering his forehead and framing the sides of his face neatly. He also had, upon closer inspection, no whisker marks, and his skin tone was a bit paler than the Naruto he remembered. The person sitting there also looked older than he should be, had it been the same Naruto he was talking about. All of these signs showed that this Naruto was not the one they had hoped him to be, and yet there were just too many similarities for Gaara to ignore, but he did, for now at least. MNGH, the sound of a female groan got both Gaara and Temari's attention as they looked down to the woman that was curled up into the blonde. Somehow having missed her completely. Amber eyes fluttered open, locking on the still forms of Gaara and Temari before closing. Naruto-kun, who are they and why are they standing there? Oh hey Tamamo, Naruto greeted her before kissing the top of her head right between her 2 ears. They are Gaara and Temari from, I assume, one of the other 5 villages are informed us about, judging by the robes the redhead is wearing. Tamamo opened her mouth, a soft escaping her throat. While Naruto and Tamamo were busy with another, Temari turned to her younger brother. Am I seeing things, or is that a tale? She asked incredulously as she rubbed her own eyes to see if she was imagining things. No, I see it as well, Gaara answered, as despite not showing it outwardly he was as shocked as she was. He wasn't really focused on the outfit the pinkett Naruto called Tamamo was wearing as much as he was looking at the tail that swished back and forth and the fox ears that were sticking out on top of her head. Gaara, Temari, what is going on? Having been watching his 2 siblings speak with whomever the person was in the chair, curiosity got the better of him as he too walked over. However, the words escaped his mouth as he laid his eyes on the beauty that was Tamamo. He unashamedly looked her up and down, paying especially a lot of attention of unique yet revealing outfit the woman wore. He unconsciously licked his lips as he openly leered at what must be the most beautiful woman he had ever seen in his life, the tail and her ears only increasing her beauty. Unlike his younger brother, Kankuro was a lot more interested in the opposite sex, and it showed. He had seen Konoha's current Hokage, Tsunade Senju, a woman proclaimed as most beautiful kunoiki, but he could, without any doubt, admit that this fox woman was on a whole other level than Tsunade or any girl he had laid his eyes on in his life. Long legs covered in blue stockings that stopped past her knees, revealing her bare skin to the world. He eyed the weird footwear she wore but quickly ignored it in favor of looking at the rest of her. Unfortunately for him, a fist impacting the side of his head stopped him, and he looked at his older sister, who was the person responsible for doing so. What the hell, Temari? He asked as he rubbed his head. Instead of answering him, Temari just pointed in front of her. Grumbling to himself, he followed to where she was pointing at, only to meet a pair of deep blue eyes that stared at him with annoyance. He swallowed as he felt a lump in his throat as he saw his own life flash before his eyes in a matter of seconds, and quickly averted his gaze. Seeing the makeup-wearing boy remove his gaze from both himself and Tamamo, he then looked at Gaara. I don't know who he is, but if I see him staring at Tamamo again, me and him are going to have a problem, got it? He received a stiff nod from Gaara, making him snort. Good, because if he would have looked any longer I would have killed them right on the spot. He sent out a small fraction of his power out to make sure they understood he was not kidding around. Gaara, Temari and Kankuro each stiffened as an overwhelming feeling of dread hit them for a second before it was gone. I am sorry, Kankuro stuttered out as he regained his wits. Naruto spared the boy a glance before rolling his eyes with a click of his tongue. Weaklings. Getting a better hold on Tamamo, he stood up with her in a bridal carry while showing that he was the tallest in the room. It was nice meeting you two, I guess, he said with a shrug before walking past them. Oh, and your room keys are laying over there. He nudged his head to where the counter was placed. Not sparing them any last look, he walked towards their own room, leaving the three siblings behind. Immediately after they were alone, Gaara spoke. Kankuro, said boy flinched as Gaara's green eyes peered into his own. I better not see you do anything like such again. I'm not sure who he is despite sharing the same first name and certain traits as Uzumaki Naruto, but whoever he is, he's stronger than me. Are you serious, Gaara? A nod. Yes. Even I felt like I was close to dead when he sent out his killing intent. It was far worse than Shukaku could ever do, and the worst part, I felt he was holding back, a lot. With that he motioned for Temari to follow as he grabbed their keys and left him behind. Kankuro, who had frozen up, snapped out of it before quickly catching up with his two siblings. Gaara, Temari, wait for me. Two people could be seen overlooking the building the 5-cage summit was going to be held. Both were male and clad in a black cloak with red clouds on it, showing they belonged to the infamous criminal organization Akatsuki that had been terrorizing the elemental nations for the past few years. The one on the right, who had short, spiky black hair and wore an orange spiral mask that covered up his face, spoke to the younger male who seemed to glare at the building in the distance. Are you sure you are up for this, Sasuke-kun? His voice was calm yet held a childish tone to it. Of course, Toby. I've been ready ever since you've shown me the truth. Konoha will pay for its betrayal of the Uchiha. For using my brother, Sasuke growled as his fists were clenched. A dark aura surrounding him, though it was mostly ignored by the man next to him. Very well, good luck, Sasuke-kun, Toby cheerfully spoke before he walked himself away. Reappearing a couple miles away inside an abandoned building, Toby looked to his right, just in time as out of the ground a jewel-colored, Venus trap-like creature showed itself. Tetsu, Toby greeted the plant-like being in acknowledgement. Madara-sama, do you think it's smart to let Sasuke attack the cage summit? The Venus flytrap asked, its voice changing between deep and malicious to much more cheerful and childlike halfway through. Toby scoffed, much to their surprise. Of course not, he's foolish to believe he has even the slightest chance against either of those, let alone 5, but who am I to stop him of rushing to his death? Zetsu blinked. Didn't you need him for your plan? Need? No, Zetsu, I don't need him at all, he's a mere pawn. A disposable one at that. His arrogance and one-track mind makes him nothing but a nuisance in the long run. Perhaps he can be of any sort of use and get lucky by injuring any of the cages, though that is doubtful as he never had fought against someone that didn't hold back. Toby turned to Zetsu, his single visible Sharingan glowing as he continued. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki, Orochimaru, even Itachi never went all out. The Jinchuriki didn't want to kill him, Orochimaru was close to death, and Itachi would never hurt his little brother. All of these fights have done nothing but fuel his arrogance, thinking he can match even a single cage. I see, so that's your plan. Very smart to use his anger towards Konoha for it. Yes, if he survives, good. If he dies, it's of no consequence, though a shame we'll never see him fully using the power of Itachi's eyes. Toby merely shrugged his shoulders. Setsu, any news regarding those two that I told you to spy on? Yes, Madara-sama, both the blonde and woman are here as well, reportedly having traveled with the Raikage and arrived here a day or two ago. Anything else? Have you discovered more about them? Setsu nodded. Yes. The blonde, his name is Naruto, and the woman with him is named Tamamo. They are also the source of power that was felt throughout the nations little over a week ago. Naruto, Toby repeated, as in the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. A shake of the head was his answer. No, Madara-sama, while they look very much alike, we couldn't sense any chakra radiating from him, Kyuubi's or his own. No chakra, are you sure about this, Zetsu? He asked, skeptical. Hi, anything else, are they a threat? Yes, the blonde is. We watched him spew out a literal wall of flames several hundred feet wide back in Kumo. Even Madara's don't compare to the one we had seen, and that was done without any chakra. He also showed an ability to fly using wings made out of flames. Another energy that isn't chakra, and the ability to fly, which until now was only possible by Onoki. This Naruto sounds very interesting yet dangerous as well. What about the woman that was with him, Tamamo? We're not sure, she hasn't shown any power. She might have, though we could sense she did have chakra inside of her. She is interesting though, Madara-sama. She has fox ears and a tail. Zetsu stopped speaking as Toby looked at him with his single eye. Fox ears, a tail, are you sure of this, Zetsu? While he didn't often show any emotion, Toby was unable to stop the disbelief from leaking into his words. Hi, they are both real. We also discovered that she and Naruto are a couple. White Zetsu made a few kissing noises before it was silenced by his black counterpart. I see, that might be of use then. If the blonde is really as dangerous as you say, we can keep him out of this if we manage to get this Tamamo in our hands. Though I will have to pay them a visit to see if your claims are true. Toby rubbed his mask-covered chin in thought before nodding. Yes, I will see them myself before deciding on our next action. With pain out of the way, it should be no problem to capture the Hachibi, as we already have a replacement for the Kyuubi, especially once I transplant the Rinnegan to myself. Tetsu, keep an eye on this Naruto person in case he reveals more of himself. The less surprises the better. Tetsu gave a nod before he sank back in the ground without leaving any evidence behind that he was here in the first place. Toby followed moment later as he was sucked up into his eye. Meanwhile, Naruto and Tamamo could be seen inside of a small tea house that was located in the center of the village. The couple were sitting side by side, Tamamo leaning into him as each had a cup of tea resting on the table in front of them. This is quite nice, no? Naruto asked Tamamo, who nodded her head in agreement. The tea that is being served tastes quite nice as well. Agree, though it's still not as good as yours. He complimented her, which caused her to blush. Moo, flatterer. Tamamo mumbled. Naruto chuckled at her before he brought one hand up to push away some of his blonde locks that covered his eyes. TCH, I think I need a haircut soon, Tamamo. It's getting long enough to get in the way. Tamamo leaned back as she looked at him. He was correct, his hair had indeed gotten quite long. Long enough to the point some of the spikes had dropped from the weight it was trying to support. I think it's nice, she softly spoke, which got his attention. Seeing the raised eyebrow he sent in her direction, she elaborated. I mean, aren't you tired from having the same hairstyle for over 100 years? It's a nice change from the usual spiky locks, it makes you look a bit more mature. Really now? Tamamo nodded her head. Well, I guess it wouldn't hurt to change it up for once. Though the locks that are blocking my view will have to change, as it will be nothing but an obstacle during battle. Battle? Are you saying we're going to have a fight? Honestly, Naruto began as he let out a heavy sigh. You know what are asked of us, right? The possibility of a war happening is quite large, and us getting brought into it is quite large, especially if it tells whoever the other cages are of our existence. Now, while there isn't much to worry about, as there is no possible way they can force us to join aside from asking and hoping we agree. These cages are far from being as strong as even the weakest ultimate class devils I had run into during the war outclasses them, and even those I can remove from existence by the dozens with ease. If these 5 are the strongest fighters here in this strange world, there is also no need for us to fight, as it would end up in a one-sided slaughter and we'd win this war for them. That is something I don't want, or rather have no interest in. There's no fun in that, you know. He looked at Tamamo, who shook her head at him. What? You know it's true. Just a simple snap of my fingers and say bye-bye to Tetsu no Kuni. His words earned him a nudge to the ribs from her, to which he grimaced as she didn't hold back her strength by much as she did so. Ow, Tamamo, he whined in mock pain as his healing factor already took care of it. She huffed. Stop being such a child, Naruto-kun, we both know that didn't hurt. It actually did hurt, but he merely nodded. For some odd reason Tamamo's strength was off the charts, to where even he was afraid what she could do if she didn't hold back. He had gotten somewhat of a preview of what she was capable of during the massages she liked to give him, and she used more force than his body had even felt before. Though the results were welcoming, as he would always feel much better when she would do that. In a movement that surprised her, he leaned in and gave her a soft kiss, one which she returned after a second of understanding what was happening. Unfortunately, or fortunately depending on whom you would ask, the simple kiss quickly became something more, and Naruto leaned back in his seat as Tamamo pulled herself in his lap. His hand roaming up and down her legs as their tongues came into play. Before they could continue, though, they were interrupted by the sound of someone clearing their throat, breaking the kiss, which earned him a disappointed whine from Tamamo. As his blue eyes looked at who had interrupted them, Tamamo began placing soft kissing on his jaw as his eyes looked and see that the person that interrupted them was none other than the Kazekage, Gaara or something, with standing next to him with a blonde girl and the boy who was leering at Tamamo before, both sporting slight blushes. Yes, he inquired as he pet Tamamo's ears. Would you mind if we sit here, Naruto-san? Gaara asked as he motioned towards the empty seats that were placed on the opposite side of the table they were seated. Hey, make yourself comfortable, I guess. He responded with a shrug as he lightly patted Tamamo's thighs as a signal for her to change her position, as she was literally straddling him. Ah, Tamamo gave a cute pout which took a lot of him to stay unbothered by it. She moved back to her next to him but made sure to lean back into him like before. Naruto sent the boy wearing the strange dark outfit a look, causing him to quickly look away as he was caught staring, clearly remembering the warning he had sent him the other day. The 5 of them sat in silence, the only noise being that of Naruto or Tamamo sipping their tea, along with a soft rumbling noise that came from her throat as he scratched her behind her ears. A minute or two later, a waitress walked up to them carrying a wooden tray with on top of it 3 cups with steaming hot tea. She seemed a bit surprised that the trio had joined their table but didn't say it out loud. As she finished serving their tea, she was caught sneaking glances at Naruto by Tamamo, who narrowed her amber eyes at her, making her scurry off. It got a soft chuckle out of him though, seeing her jealousy firsthand. Shortly thereafter the silence was broken though as Gaara asked a question. Naruto-san, Tamamo-san, would you mind explaining us what you are? The way he worded his question earned him a glare from Naruto and he elaborated. What I mean is that we've never seen anyone with ears like yours or a tail. Tamamo looked at Naruto to see if it was okay to reveal such information. She received a nod, signifying that it's fine. I'm a yokai, she revealed cheerfully, perhaps a bit too cheerfully but she didn't seem too bothered by that. A yokai, Tamamo nodded. Yokai are people with animal traits like these ears or my tail. Said fluffy appendage came up from behind as she hugged it close to her chest. We are also capable of using chakra with certain races able to utilize senjutsu. So, are there more people like yourself? The older boy, Kankuro asked. Yep, an entire village full of them in MPH. Naruto stopped her from revealing more as he covered her mouth with the palm of his hand while sending the group from sooner a calm smile. Tamamo meanwhile tried her best to remove the hand blocking her mouth as she wiggled about. Her efforts were futile though and eventually she stopped struggling, opting to instead frown at him. Naruto rolled his eyes as he leant in and gave her a kiss the moment he removed his hand from her mouth, successfully quelling any anger she might had regardless of how small it was. Let's get going Tamamo, I want to walk around a bit more, he whispered to her. Hi, she agreed as he leaned back before the two abruptly stood up. Something wrong? Gaara asked them. Not really, Naruto shook his head at him. We're just finished here, we only came here as we were told the tea here is quite delicious. It was but not as good as Tamamo's own recipe but whatever. For now Tamamo and I are going to continue looking around to see what this village has to offer. I see, perhaps we will meet again. Perhaps, Naruto hummed as Tamamo walked up next to him. His hand came to rest on her behind as they left the room. Not even 5 minutes after they left 3 different people walked in and made themselves known. Gaara recognized him immediately as 5th Hokage Tsunade Senju and her guards being Hatake Kakashi and none other than Jiraiya of the Sannin. Kazekage Dono, I didn't expect you here. Tsunade greeted her fellow Kage. Hokage Dono, he returned her greeting with respect. Are these seats taken? She gestured to the empty seats that were previously occupied by Naruto and Tamamo. No. Feel free to sit down. Perhaps we can catch up while I'll tell you about a rather interesting person that is here in Tetsu no Kuni. Ho, that got her attention as she sat down in the middle, Kakashi and Jiraiya sitting down beside her. And who might this person be? Gaara gave her a smile. His name is Naruto Bale and he's someone that has gained my attention. Uura, Naruto drawled out in pure boredom as he was laying on the futon, his eyes locked onto the ceiling. There was absolutely nothing to do at the moment as at the moment the Cage Summit was taking place. Yesterday evening the Mizukage had arrived along with her guards at last. While he hadn't seen the women firsthand he had overheard some people talking about her which was how he found out it was a woman. Don't whine Naru, Tamamo spoke up from where she was sitting. He turned his head into her direction and leveled her with a glare that didn't carry any strength due to him not even having any motivation to keep it up. Tamamo, come here, please, he whined like some kind of child. Tamamo looked at him for a moment before releasing a soft sigh as she nodded. She resealed the scroll she was reading back up before standing up and walked over to him. Once there she lowered herself onto the futon so she was on her knees. Naruto held his arms out towards her which she accepted and was promptly pulled on top of him. Naruto took a deep breath, inhaling her scent as he held her close. The familiar weight of her body on top of his own doing wonders at making him feel calm, at peace. However, Naruto didn't get any time to bask in her presence as a sudden spike of dark, cold energy reached their senses, the origin being the location the cages had their meeting. He and Tamamo exchanged glances with the other before both nodding as they quickly sat up. Luckily both were still clothed so they could quickly get going as Naruto used the window that belonged to their room to leave. Helping Tamamo outside, Naruto formed a pair of wings out of flame on his back, picking Tamamo up before shooting off. It only took him a few seconds before arriving at the place with the speed he used, quickly getting on guard as he took note of the cut-down samurai in front of the entrance that was supposed to make sure no one would enter. He paid him no further attention though as he could sense several spikes in energy from the inside, one he recognized belonged to the Raikage while several others were unknown. Come on, he kept Tamamo close before walking inside. The scene that greeted them inside were one of more bodies littering the ground, some slumped against the wall though they were all dead. They should be just over there. Tamamo pointed out a hallway which supposedly was where the fighting was taking place. I see, let's get ready then, he said and Tamamo nodded. He was about to walk towards the fighting before he was forced to stop as a glow encompassed Tamamo. Eyes narrowed, he watched with something akin to anticipation as the glow that surrounded her died down. As the glow died down it showed Tamamo, still looking the same as she did before. However, the addition of a levitating mirror that floated around her got his attention. Is that? He trailed off as he looked at the mirror with something akin to awe. It was beautiful looking, the colors fitting Tamamo with it being mostly gold and blue much like her outfit. He could sense divine energy radiating from it, which gave him a hint of what it exactly was in the first place. Yata no Kagami, eightfold blessings of Amaterasu. Tamamo spoke softly, confirming his thoughts on just what it was. It's beautiful, he breathed out as he looked at her. Did Amaterasu give you that one? Tamamo nodded her head with a smile. Yep, she entrusted it to me, telling me I would have more use for it than with her where it would just lay around. I see, amazing. He reached up and trailed one of his finger over it. Naruto-kun, Tamamo called for him, making him look at her. I'll let you look at it some other time, okay? We have something to attend. Ah, he laughed sheepishly before nodding as the two walked down the hallway. Reaching the end of the hallway, it led them towards a large hall where currently a fight was taking place. The two recognized the Raikage along with his two guards who were currently fighting against three teenagers. Darui seemed to be holding his own as he fought against a pale, white-haired boy who was wielding an oversized blade. A blade which was being blocked by Daru's own cleaver-like sword. To the side, C seemed to be in some sort of staring contest with an orange-haired monstrosity who, despite radiating a lot of energy, wasn't actively doing anything, leading him to believe he had it under control. Their attention was on a who seemed to be in a battle against a dark-haired teen. Lightning covering him as he casually dodged any swings sent by the teen's lightning-covered blade. Naruto allowed an eyebrow to rise at the impressive speed the teen displayed, though it seemed that the lightning cloak or whatever it was increased A's own speed and reflexes by much more. The dark-haired teen went through a few weird motions with his hands before his right hand was covered in lightning. The sound of chirping birds reached their ears, Tamamo's own twitching irritable before he shot forward. A kept his ground as the boy got closer and closer before then, just at the last moment his elbow shot out. Naruto narrowed his eyes as the teen managed to dodge it, something that shouldn't have happened, but kept on watching as he then shot his own arm out, like a spear intending to pierce the Raikage. It didn't pierce, however, and grabbed the boy before casually lifting him up. The lightning cloak around him increasing in intensity as he slammed him down without a second thought. The ground beneath the two cratered as dust was kicked up in the air, obscuring what was currently happening. Oh, what's this? Naruto said to Tamamo as the dust and dirt dissipated and showed a purple rib cage surrounded the teen that had been slammed in the ground. It's chakra, though it feels cold, Tamamo informed him. I see, was his reply as they continued to watch what was going to happen next. As they did that, Naruto couldn't help but feel an urge to kill the boy that was thrown back by a punch from A. This was the first time he had seen him, yet the urge to step in and remove the boy from existence was big. Like a voice in the back of his head was whispering for him to kill him. He managed to control himself though as he forcefully suppressed the voice just in time for the boy to say something that got both his and Tamamo's attention. Amaterasu, he intoned the name of the goddess of the sun and black flames burst forward, seemingly coming from his eyes. They were dodged however as A moved out of the way. The flames instead hitting one of the several samurai that had appeared from other hallways attached to the room as backup. Something about those flames, Tamamo mumbled, which he heard. The teen looked around for A who reappeared in his blind spot before lashing out. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he saw those same black flames covering the chakra construct. Having a good idea of what the Raikage was about to do, Naruto stepped in, disappearing from his spot next to Tamamo and materializing in front of the Raikage, stopping the man from potentially losing his arm. His sudden appearance caught them all off guard, however, no one was more shocked than the teen inside the purple rib cage as his eyes landed on the sun-kissed hair he knew one person had. Why are you stopping me? He yelled out at Naruto in anger, who leveled him with a glare that got him to shut up. Don't yell at me, do you want to lose your arm? From what I've seen, if you would have hit him but at the cost of your own arm, is that worth it? Naruto told him with a surprisingly calm voice. He paid no attention to the boy behind him who coughed up blood as he felt his body strain from overuse. I don't care, he kidnapped my brother, A growled out as the lightning cloak around him increased in intensity. Sparks began running up and down his body and then across the floor, which got cut up in the process due to the intensity. Naruto remained unharmed though as he used his own demonic energy to create a thin layer around his body that acted as a shield. Enough. Naruto let go of A's arm before flicking the larger man in his chest, successfully sending his flying back much to his shock. He wasn't the only one though, as Darui, C and the Sand siblings who had arrived the moment he got a hold of A's arm had seen it as well. C and Darui quickly ran towards their cage, who had been launched into the wall by him. Now as for you, he turned around, making the dark-haired teen eyes widen as he looked as if he had seen a ghost. Not giving him a chance to speak, Naruto shot his hand forward. The chakra construct broke on contact though the black flames managed to get in contact with his skin. He ignored those however as his fist impacted the teen's stomach with enough force he folded over his fist while coughing up a mouthful of blood from the force behind it. Making a twisting motion with his fist, Naruto sent the boy flying backwards hard enough the room shook as rubble crashed down upon his form. Naruto kept his eye on the rubble that buried the teen for a moment before averting his gaze to the Raikage who had been helped up and was joined by the Kazekage and his guards. Tamamo. He barely finished speaking her name before she was next to him and the two walked over towards the two cages. They looked warily at the two. Both the guards prepared themselves while trying not to get distracted by the levitating mirror floating around the two. Sorry for that, but it was necessary, Naruto told the Raikage, who nodded his head to the surprise of his two guards. I understand. Now that my mind is clear, I have to thank you for saving me the potential loss of an arm. Though what about you? A motion towards his hand which he used to break through the chakra construct. Ah, Naruto raised his left hand, which was then covered in crimson flames. The heat emitted made him back up a bit. They watched as he placed his left hand over his right, the crimson flames devouring the black ones on contact. Once done, he removed his hand, showing unblemished skin, much to their amazement. They all knew what those black flames were capable of, and to see this man doing what was thought to be impossible and come of unscathed was nothing short of amazing. While he himself had been told what he was capable of, seeing it firsthand was still something else. So, what now? Naruto asked them as he began playing with the mirror that floated in the air in front of him. Before I get to that, what happened to him, Uchiha Sasuke? Who? Naruto couldn't help but ask before wincing in pain to the point he had to close his eyes and suppress the urge to curse. Are you okay? Tamamo asked, concerned as she took a hold of him. After a few seconds, Naruto gave a small nod as he straightened himself while rubbing the side of his head. Yeah, just, these past few days I've been experiencing brief moments of pain when certain names are mentioned. I'm fine now though, Tamamo. He gave her a peck on the lips before focusing back on the topic at hand. Oh, him. I'm not sure about him honestly. I didn't hit him too hard though, I think. But he should be buried back there. He pointed a thumb behind him where numerous samurai had begun removing the rubble. Good. Then it's time for us to head back. Took a step before stopping and turned back towards the two. Naruto-san, Tamamo-san, how about you join us in our talks? I think it's pretty important for the other cages to know about you, especially with this happening. And there it was. Naruto had guessed something like this was going to happen. I don't mind. Tamamo. He looked at his companion. Sure, was her answer, though she didn't seem to focus on that. Instead she seemed concerned about Naruto and the increase of what she assumed were headaches, yet he never had them before. She would look into it later to make sure it wasn't anything bad. While it was rare for a devil and especially a phoenix to get sick, she knew his mother had died due to an incurable and extremely rare virus and didn't want to take any risks. Follow us then. Tamamo barely managed to hear, though was helped by Naruto, who intertwined their fingers together before following after them.